Hi everyone, my name's Christy and I just want to talk to everybody about my journey with cervical cancer and all of it that it involved. Hopefully that I'll help somebody out there that's either just been diagnosed at a young age like me or come through the other side. Any help whatsoever, then it'll be worthwhile doing. But I'll start from the beginning of my story, and it started about 3 years ago after I married my now husband, and we moved into our beautiful house. And sorry, the cars outside are really noisy right now. Moved into our beautiful house, and we knew that straight away we'd like to try for a family. So we did, and about a month or so in, I decided to take a pregnancy test. And to our absolute amazement, it was positive. So straight away I rung my husband and let him know the good news that we were expecting our first child. And he was overjoyed, of course. And we were both really, really happy. We were literally getting Disney film stuff. Married, new house, and family on the way. But probably a day or two later, I got a call from my GP who asked me to come in to discuss some smear test results. So went in, wasn't too concerned, but the look on his face wasn't great. But I told him that I was pregnant, and he said that sometimes you do get abnormal cells while you're pregnant, but we need some further tests doing. So I was booked in at our local hospital for about a week later to have a camera put down near my cervix to have a closer look. So I went in for that day, and if anybody's been through it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's not dignified at all. That you lay on the bed and you put your feet up in stirrups while they put the camera in. But I was watching the nurses' faces as they were going through the procedure, and it could just tell it wasn't a good vibe. They didn't look good. And then they took the camera out, and before they even took me down off the bed, so my feet were still in stirrups, the doctor said to me that we think it's cancer. And that was the first time that it had been mentioned to me, the first time it got brought up, and it was a shock. I didn't actually ask many questions at all. We arranged for me to have some more tests done, and I just went home with my mum, who had taken me to the appointment because we didn't think it was a big deal, so my husband didn't come. And that night was horrible because by the time my husband got home, then we were all in a mess. We literally spent that night just staring at walls, not knowing what to think, what to do. And after all, I got a baby growing inside me, and it was so unsure of what was going to happen there. But we went back for some more tests, and they said, which I think was an MRI and some things like that. Sorry, I can't remember exactly. I think it was an MRI that showed the mass on my cervix, and they confirmed that it was cervical cancer. I then, after discussion with my specialist, I then asked about the baby to see what's going to happen with the pregnancy, how I was going to have treatment and how the baby was going to cope with that. But my specialist told me that it was very unlikely that I would be able to keep the baby. This was really hard to hear, but we were still trying to stay positive. So we arranged to go down to London to have some more tests done, some more in-depth tests to see what can be done, because I'd heard about maybe taking half of the womb away and leaving the baby in there to go to almost full term. But after travelling down to London, having all the tests and things, the results came back from there that the cancer had spread too far. And I sat down with my specialist, with my husband and my parents in the room, and I will never forget when the doctor told me that there is no way of keeping my baby. If I did so, then they wouldn't be able to treat me with curative intent. And that was very hard to hear. I'm not gonna lie, I screamed. It was heartbreaking. So, as you can imagine, we all felt quite low, went home. But not long after that, I was up through the night with bad pains through my stomach and my back that just got worse and worse. Ended up having to call an ambulance because I was bleeding a lot and vomiting as well. And that night I miscarried our beautiful baby, which was very, very hard because we had actually been to the hospital not long before, just a few days before, and seen a healthy baby on the monitor with a nice strong heartbeat. So anyway, it was a shock, and laying in that hospital bed the following morning on my own, not knowing what the future is going to bring, and knowing that I'd lost our precious baby, was very, very, very hard to cope with. So my husband picked me up and took me home, and we tried to emotionally recover as much as we can and get ourselves ready for my operation, which was going to be a radical hysterectomy, and I was due to have that on New Year's Eve. So, well, pretty soon the day came around and I went in for the operation and everything went fine. It was quite a long recovery, really. I was in the hospital for a week or so, but then came home and was progressing and getting over it as expected, really. When I'd been home for about a week, I was due to go back to the hospital to discuss the operation and what they'd found in that. And before I went in for the operation, I'd asked the surgeon to keep my ovaries intact so that hopefully I could then extract them and have a baby, a biological baby, through surrogacy or something along those lines in the future. But when I got into this hospital appointment, she told us that unfortunately the cancer had spread to my lymph nodes, and therefore I would need to start chemotherapy and radiotherapy straight away. in the meantime, I managed to get in to see a fertility specialist to discuss my ovaries, because after all, we still wanted a family, and I was going to fight for that as much as I can. And he told me that he could extract my eggs, and he knew that we didn't have a lot of time, so we couldn't go through the normal IVF process, but he said that there was a way that they could possibly be taken out. I did go back to my specialist after the appointment with the fertility specialist, and she said that she would advise against it, and she wanted me to abandon that. It would put me too much at risk, and to start my chemo and radio straight away and not delay. So my husband and I spoke about this and decided that we need to do that. We need to save me in any way that we can and not put me at any more risk. So I had the chemo and radio, which if any of you have been through it, you know it's a very hard process. It's very draining, but somewhat necessary, isn't it? But I needed to be strong for my husband and for my family, because after all, they're going through this at the same time as well. But yeah, I kind of have skipped through a lot of stuff, but I know that a lot of people would have gone through a similar thing to me, so you kind of know what fill in the gaps kind of thing. But now it's 3 years on, and we are in a much better place in our lives, and I'd like to share with you our next adventure, our next happy adventure through surrogacy and inducing lactation without pregnancy, and all that kind of crazy stuff that's involved. So hopefully then I'll do another video and you can click on that below, and I'll see you another day. Okay then. Bye.